This guy was one of the most relevant faces in the health niche online, but it wasn't because of his expertise, but because he was eating raw, rotten meat on camera. And this is not about the diet trend he was following. This is more about how extremes gather attention, which later becomes content. And when that content transforms into your identity, it gets really difficult to reinvent yourself while the internet moves on from you. Frank Tufano started as a carnivore, but as the trend faded, he had to switch to something else. And unfortunately for him, that was the beginning of his end.
Please like and subscribe.
Frank Tufano was a known face during the rise of the carnivore diet trend here on YouTube. But he was different. He stood out from the rest because while others will give tips, cooking options, and overall promote the meat-only lifestyle for health benefits, Frank took things a bit further.
What's up guys? Today I'm going to show you how to make some high meat. And high meat is pretty much rotten meat, and these rotten and fermented foods have taken a place in pretty much every indigenous society. You know, the thing is, never tastes as bad as it smells. That's what I've learned with this high meat stuff. Oh my god. It's like pure rotten cheese. It's so fucking gross.
He became widely known as the guy who will put a piece of raw meat inside a jar, close it, and let it rot. Then he will eat it on camera while commenting on all the health benefits of what he was doing. This wasn't for shock value, he wasn't trolling. Well, maybe he was trolling himself. But Frank thought he was actually doing what he was saying, for health benefits. This was the most natural way of eating. I mean, the fact that he survived that diet makes his stomach invincible, to be honest. There were normies calling this disturbing, but Frank had a lot of viewers who actually were interested in his thoughts and opinions about health and nutrition. Plenty of channels popped up with people eating rotten meat from a jar.
Just think about kimchi, for example, or different types of old cheeses. People have done this for years, for hundreds of years, thousands of years. Think about fermented foods, about cured foods. I once read about the Inuit doing it to their fish. They would ferment their fish, they would feed it to their dogs, even their sleigh dogs, and they would go for days without getting tired.
Hi everybody, I'm Dr. Boz. Welcome back. We are going to walk through fermenting chicken liver. The fermented livers are also called high meat. And you'll see several videos out there where people would eat the fermented liver and they would get a sense of euphoria. So I'm fascinated, like, what is that? Why? Oh God, it's so bad!
But here we also have some of my other high meats. I think here I have, that is salmon. That's also coming up to a month old. I think that is a kidney, also pretty old. And then some beef heart, and you get the idea, some beef fat in there as well.
Frank's teaching spread to a lot of people, especially the ones who were already skeptical of mainstream nutrition and were looking for something more natural. It seemed that the more outrageous his content, the most attention he received. What a shocker, right? Frank didn't become famous by accident. He presented himself at a moment in time where people were finding a correct way of eating. There were a lot of diets popping up and people were in a lot of confusion and distrust towards diets overall. A lot of health gurus appeared telling people how oatmeal is poison, eggs are the worst, and then here is Frank, with his honest self in front of a camera, looking like a very healthy young man, eating raw meat. And it worked for a while, but trends online are short-lived, and as Frank's channel was a one-trick pony, he realized meat was everything he had. That was his content, so he was in a predicament. But no matter how many layers of crazy you add to a trend, it will fade away, no matter what you do. And that's what happened to the carnivore diet. I think everyone jumped to the keto diet after this. A lot of new channels appeared, and just like that, Frank was obsolete. He didn't like the idea of fading away, so he pivoted his content to something else. Another trend that was getting stronger by the second. Looksmaxxing is a trend that surrounds the idea that physical appearance can be optimized to improve your life. That sounds like hitting the gym, eating within your calories, and a lot of vegetables. But this trend is way more aggressive than that. Frank started obsessing over facial structure, symmetry, and perceived attractiveness. He was looking for visual perfection in a totally unhealthy way. It makes sense that he was hopping on this bandwagon since his past content was extremely unhealthy as well, and he was still carrying the same formula, self-improvement to the max. Frank really thought this was the correct way to solve all his deepest problems. Once the outside is how I want, the rest will follow. But by now, you know Frank will only escalate, right? Well,
the procedure's over. This medieval nut job gouged my eyes out for 5 hours. I don't feel too bad, but I can see like blurry out of my right eye, and my left eye is closed.
Alright guys, it's Thursday. 1 week after the surgery, doctor took the stitches out. I don't look like as much of an abomination, but still swollen. Eyes are swollen.
Show you guys in the mirror. Here I actually look pretty good. I actually look pretty good here.
I mean, this has consumed my entire life. I've been so upset about my appearance, and although it's not that bad, you know, I obviously look worse than before, and I was misled by the surgeon, and because of how things have been going and how I've been treated, I've ultimately decided to make this video. You know, I was trying to be a gentleman, trying to respect him being the best and most popular eye surgeon, but from the way he's treated me, from how this whole situation has gone, it's beyond disgusting.
Frank decided his face needed a little tweak here and there, so he chose plastic surgery to reach perfection. But sadly for Frank, the results were not what he expected. According to Frank himself, the procedure left him physically botched, and he showed the results. His eyes looked very different in a weird way. But he also talked about his eyesight being impaired now because of the surgery. This severely affected his self-esteem because the reflection in the mirror was not what he expected, and unlike diets, he could not change it back. This was permanent. It's easy to call this guy a dummy and mock his story. The guy who will eat rotten meat got a botched surgery. Lol, right? But I think it's important to know and understand what happened because Frank didn't change randomly. He was following his same logic, the one that made him viral at the very beginning of his online career. Frank's core belief was all about the ultimate optimization of oneself. That's why he was eating raw meat and jumped into the Looksmaxxing trend. There must be a correct way to live, a correct way to eat, a correct way to look. You just have to follow the rules and all your problems will disappear. The problem is that when you turn yourself, your health, how you look, your content, experimentation becomes a must. Escalation is the only way to move forward. Once Frank showed his new face, everything and everyone changed around him. The same people who followed and shared his beliefs were treating him as a cautionary tale, a living example of what not to do.
We had 2 procedures with one doctor who said everything was fixed, which it clearly wasn't. We went to a second doctor, which basically scheduled me for surgery immediately and was still unable to correct the cross-eyed appearance and the vision issues.
Frank sadly became a case study for people to look at, learn, gawk, and mock. But this only showed how flawed this looks are gonna fix your life idea and how it can actually destroy people's lives. Where is Frank?
This is the first post-op update. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to cover. So no, what he specifically did, and I think I explained it already, just not that well. He did end up putting more medial plates and more and like diagonal plates here too, to like lift the eye up a little bit, and he removed the implants. That's everything that he did.
He's still around, still obsessed with his looks, but now he wants to correct his face by getting more surgeries. Yeah, it will not end well. He is quieter now, more defensive and introspective. The man we knew before no longer exists. He became the consequence of his own actions. And sadly, this is not unique to Frank. People get so obsessed with their looks that they will do whatever it takes to be accepted by their peers or even complete strangers. They really think the outside is the most important thing in a person. Once I'm beautiful, my life will change. Once I lose weight, my self-esteem will grow. Your looks become your identity, and later it becomes your reputation. The people around you, as well as the audience, only remember the version that benefits them the most, not the person you want to become. Frank Tufano didn't lose relevance because he was wrong, but because that same mindset that made him famous came back to collect.
I fear no man, but that jar, it frightens me.